Hey, what's up? The Cabinet Vision guy here with another video podcast. As you can see, I have a report template open that we created a few episodes ago. I've been doing a lot of Crystal Reports work and figured it would be a great time to work on this a little more. Just to recap, last time we went over creating a report file, adding the basic tables that most of our reports will use, as well as what formulas and parameters are and how to use them, and even how to place and create subreports. This time I figured we'd work with grouping. Before we do that though, I want to show you a really important step that will make sure that this report works in future versions of Cabinet Vision, and that's setting the data source location. When we started this report, we pointed it towards the planet/solid_8_0/database/report.mdb file. Now what about when the next version of Cabinet Vision comes out though? Since we gave it a complete path to the database, the report will still look to that database and can give us all kinds of issues. So let's look at giving the report a dynamic path to our database. To do that, we just go to the database menu and select Set Data Source Location. This brings up the Set Data Source Location dialog, which gives us information about the databases we have connected to. You can see that we are currently connected to the report.mdb for solid version 8. On top of that, the subreports that we have made are pointing to the same database. So how do we change the data source to make it dynamic? Well, it's pretty easy actually. We just need to expand the database's properties section, then right-click on the database name field and select Same as Report. Now, Crystal Reports has converted that database name to use a relative path that is equal to the directory that the report is saved to. If you didn't notice, the name here changed as well. It didn't go to a different database, but it just rebuilt the location of the database. So from now on, no matter where we put the report file, it will look to that same folder for our report.mdb file. If it finds it, great. If not, well, we'll have some problems. Let's not worry about that right now, because we will keep it in the proper location. So let me quickly do the same thing for the subreport. Now, you should remember to do this for all databases that you want to use in a report. This will ensure that they work properly in the future and don't give you erroneous errors and bad data in the future. And now we can look at grouping in Crystal Reports. What is grouping though? Well, it's taking data with similar properties and putting them together. Let's pretend that our database is a bag of M&Ms. Connecting to the database would be like opening the bag of candy and dumping it out on the table. Now we have brown candies, red candies, yellow candies, and more. If we make a little pile of candies that contains only red ones, then another pile that contains only green ones, and so on and so forth, then we are grouping the candies by their color property. And that's pretty much what we're going to do with our data when we group. We are taking some kind of property and putting it into a little pile. Now the M&M's analogy falls a little short here because there isn't much else to group on. Luckily, our data doesn't have this problem. You can create groups inside of a group to get tons of things grouped in a way that makes it very easy to produce our reports the way we want. While this report, in its current form, doesn't have the data that I really want to group on, we can still go through the group creation process to know how a group is made. To make a group, we just click on the Insert menu and then select the Group command. This brings up the Group dialog, which is where we will get started making the groups and selecting any options for that group. Let me take a minute to clarify something before we go on. Grouping is not the same as sorting. It would appear that we are sorting our data, but it's more of a pseudo-sorting that we are doing here. The sorting that is happening is only happening because our data is being grouped together. We will be specifying the sorting of the groups, but that's not the same as sorting the data, which happens before the data is actually used in the report. I mention this because it's very important to use the proper terminology when you create or edit reports. If you want to change the sorting, you wouldn't do it with a group. And if you want to group data in a specific way, you don't do it with sorting. Anyways, back to our group. The first thing we need to do is select the field that we will be grouping on. I don't have a lot of tables in the report, but if we expand this combo box here, we can see that Crystal Reports gives me all of the fields that I can use. Let's leave it on the room ID. This means that all of my data, where the rooms.roomID are the same, will be put into a single group. Next, we can set the sorting for this group. This is that pseudo sorting I was talking about. I can tell Crystal Reports to group the room IDs in ascending order, meaning from smallest to largest, descending order, which means from largest to smallest, in a specified order, meaning that I can tell it how to sort the IDs the way I want, or I can set it to the original order, meaning that we'll use the exact order that the data appears in Crystal reports. If we had sorted our fields originally, we would probably want to stay in the original order. I typically leave it in ascending order, but sometimes I like to put it in a specific order. So let's check out what that does for us. We can see it added a new tab and brought us to it so that we can set it up as we need. If we open this drop-down, we can see that I have 2 rooms in my database. If I were to select one, it would put it in this box here, and I would be able to change the order of the rooms as I needed. Since the rooms will change, especially how many there are, this isn't really a good way to choose what we need. Let's go back and change the order to ascending and then look at our options. So we can see that we have a couple of options here. The first is the ability to customize the group name field. Now we can't see it yet, but every time we create a group, a special field is created. This isn't contained in the special fields section of the Explorer, but rather in the group name fields in the Explorer. By default, the group name will be the values that we selected in the Common tab. For this example, it would display the room ID number. Now this isn't any good since we won't know what the room ID refers to, so we would want to customize the name to something that is a little more recognizable. So let's scroll down and find the room table's room name field. This will display the name of the room as we had set it in Cabinet Vision. If we wanted to alter the data to, say, display more than just the room name, we could set the field to use a formula, but I think this will do for now. Next, there is the Keep Group Together option. When this is checked, Crystal Reports will attempt, when possible, to keep the group on the same page. This isn't really necessary for us, but it can be helpful for some reports. Finally, we have the Repeat Group header on each page. Let's say that this ends up being a very large group. If we check this option, then Crystal Reports will put the group name on top of every new page that is a continuation of this specific group. Again, not something that we want right now. So I just need to click OK, and we can see the group that was just made. Now Crystal Reports always brings in a text field like this at the standard size, so let me just resize it to fit properly, and then we can preview it. Oh yeah, that's right. I'd almost forgotten that parameter field, so I will enter the Cabinet Vision guy and click OK. And now you can see the report. It shows that I have the 2 rooms, kitchen and bathroom. Let's move back to the Design tab and look at something. You can see that the group consists of 2 parts, the group header and the group footer, both wrapped around the details section. The group header is what will appear at the top of every group that is created. This is where our group name typically goes. The group footer is what appears at the end of every group that is created. We don't have anything there right now, but that's okay. Let's say we wanted to delete this group. Perhaps we realize that we don't need to group by the room, or we need to group by some other criteria. All we need to do is click on either the group header or group footer and select Delete to remove the group, or Change Group to edit it. When we change the group, we just need to follow the same process as when we initially set up the group. So since we have already grouped by room, I'm going to show you how easy it is to reorder groups. To do that, let's go ahead and add 3 groups using the cabinets.depth, cabinets.height, and cabinets.width. Now that I have those in place, let me just expand the sections a little so that we can see what we're grouping on. I don't think I mentioned this before, but if the section for the group is large enough, we can see the name of the group, the name of the field that is being grouped, as well as its sorting order. Okay, so you can see that I didn't order them in the traditional fashion. This may affect my data results. Typically, we would want to group by width, then height, then depth. Any fields placed in the details section will reflect this grouping type. Since all of the groups are being used, this isn't typically a problem. But what if we wanted to reorder them anyways? Well, Crystal Reports makes it easy by just allowing us to click on the group header or footer in the sidebar and drag it to the location that we want it to be. See the blue lines here? Those will indicate where our group will go when we release our mouse. You can see that it wants to move the cabinets.width group between the cabinets.depth and cabinets.height. Let's move it 1 higher and drop it there. Now on top of moving it up, it renumbered the groups. This is important. Well, maybe not right now, but when we work with the .rim file later it will be. Let me go ahead and fix the other one. So now that we have some grouping done, let's go ahead and pull some data in here to see what we can get to show up. Since we already have the cabinets table in this report, let's just make a simple cabinet report. I will place in the details section the width string, height string, depth string, and the cabinet name fields from the cabinets table from the Field Explorer. I use the width string, height string, and depth string because these fields represent the width, height, and depth values, respectively, as string values. This will make sure that they will easily be able to be read based on what our unit type and precision was set to in Cabinet Vision. If we preview the report now, we can see that I have my group headers, and it's grouping our data together properly. Our first group was the width, so all cabinets that are 30 inches wide are grouped together. Then came the height and depth. Now, I apparently had the unit type and precision set to metric, with no trailing zeros. So Cabinet Vision converted all of my data in its string form over to that type. We can see that since all of my upper cabinets have the same width, height, and depth, they are grouped together, and the details list out one line for each of my cabinets. The same for my base cabinets and my single, lonely, tall cabinet. This isn't a very pretty report though. So before we go any further, let's remove some of the printed values from our groups, like the headers. To do that, we just need to move back to the designer and suppress the group headers. I can just right-click on the sections that I want to suppress, and you know what? We could hide this instead of suppressing. So why not just hide the sections? Well, this has to do with drilling down the report. For our reports, we don't do very much, if any, drilling down of report sections. Because of this, we just want to suppress it. Either option will remove the section from printing, so let me just go through and suppress all of our group headers here. Now that we have that done, let's go ahead and preview it again. That's nice. Our data is now a little more condensed and as such more readable. Now, why do we have these spaces between our groups though? Well, this is because our group footers weren't suppressed. Since they're still being printed, we have this spacing. Let's go back and suppress those as well. Now we can look at our final report again to see how everything is nicely grouped and condensed down for easy reading of the sections. Now this is all nice, but there are tons of wasted line items here. I have never liked having a single line item for a group of objects. It's a waste of paper and ink. And since in our industry, we always want to do whatever we can to lessen our impact on the ecosystem, let's look at condensing this information down even further so that we get a single line item for each cabinet that is of the same width, height, and depth. So we move back to the designer, and the first thing I want to do is suppress the details section this time and unsuppress group footer 4. Now we will go ahead and move all of the fields located in the details section into group footer 4. I will organize them properly so that the name of the cabinet comes first, then the width, height, and then finally depth. Now let's preview this again. Beautiful. Now we have a single line item for each cabinet that has the same width, height, and depth. This is, well, almost perfect. We have lost the number of each of those cabinets that need to be produced, so this report is, right now, pretty much useless to us. Luckily, this is easily fixed with a summary. Summaries go hand in hand with groups, actually with footer sections. We don't need a real group, but we do need a footer, whether it's the report footer or any of the group footers. So let's once again move back to the designer to insert our summary. With a lot of things we have to insert, we go to the Insert menu. This time we just select Summary, which brings up our summary dialog. The first thing we have to do is choose a field to summarize. Now if you look at the report designer, the cabinets.depth string is selected. This caused Crystal Reports to think that we want to summarize this field, but we don't. Experience has taught me that we want to use a primary key field to summarize. We don't have to, it's just better this way. The primary key field for the cabinets is the cabinet ID field. We want to use the cabinets table because this is a cabinet report. If it were a part report, we would use the parts ID field. If it was a room report, then the room ID, and so on and so forth. Anyways, now that we have the proper field selected, we need to select how the summary will work. By default, it's doing the maximum summary. This will give us the highest cabinet ID number in the list of ID numbers that it's given. We don't want this because the ID number could be 10. If we only have 3 cabinets, that would give us the wrong quantity. So we will change this to something that works for us, which is count. This will give us a count of all the cabinet ID values that Crystal Reports has given for the group of cabinets. Now there are a whole lot of functions we can use here, and I'm not going to get into all of them, or really any others right now. But I do suggest, if you have the time, to try out some various ones to see if they meet your own needs. Finally, we just need to tell Crystal Reports where to put it. We want it in group footer 4, so we just select that from the drop-down and click OK. Now it's been placed in the group footer 4. There are some fields overlapping, so let me select all of those fields, either by clicking and dragging a selection box around them, or holding Shift on my keyboard and then selecting each one with my mouse. Now I can just click on one of them and move them into place all at the same time. And now another preview, and now that's much betterer. Now, just a little more summary information. I want to get a total number of cabinets in each room as well as the total number of cabinets in the job. We will use another summary for this. But before I do so, we're going to add one more group to the report. Right now, if I have an upper cabinet that has the same width, height, and depth as a base cabinet, then it might be placed in the wrong group. To keep this from happening, we just need to add a group for one more field, and that's the cabinets.cabinetType field. This will, after Crystal Reports groups all of my cabinets by width, height, and depth, split everything up by cabinet type. Since our data is pretty simple, we will just leave that group right where it is and move the fields around the report. Great. Now just a little check on our report, and excellent, the data hasn't changed. So let's get on making the summary for the total number of cabinets in the room. In the designer, we insert a new summary. Then we set it to summarize the cabinets.cabinetID field. Then we put the summary in the group 1 footer. This is because we want the summary to count up all of the IDs in the room and give us the total. Just click OK, and you can see that not only did it unsuppress group 1 footer, it put our summary there as well. Let's check it out. Well, that's not right. I'm no mathematician, but 4 plus 4 plus 1 doesn't equal 45, or 126. What's the deal with that? Well, if you didn't notice it, I didn't select count when we made our summary. There was a reason for that. I wanted to show you how to edit the summary after we place it. So, back in the designer, I can just right-click on the summary field and select Edit Summary. Now the summary dialog is brought up, but there's no option of where to put it. That's because the field has already been placed and we can't change that here. Luckily, that doesn't matter. If we need to change it, we can just move it around the report. We just need to change the calculation from sum to count and click OK. Now let's look at our report again. Better, but I don't want all those trailing zeros. Why did Crystal Reports put those here, but not on our other summary? Well, it's because we made the summary a sum at first, and that's how Crystal Reports sets up the display for those. To fix this, we just need to right-click on the field and select Format Field. Honestly, we could have done this in the Preview pane, but I like to work in the Designer more. But anyways, it brings us to the Number tab. We just need to specify the number format we want. For this, I want no trailing zeros, so the easiest one will be to just select the top one. Plus, I don't think we're going to have cabinets in the thousands, so I don't need to worry about the thousands separator. So I'll just leave it like this and click OK. Now another preview, and perfect. 4 plus 4 plus 1 does actually equal 9. We now know that we have 9 cabinets in a room, but there's no reference there. Is this another line item that is missing information? Is this the sum of the cabinets in the room? It's not something that we can determine easily from the preview, so we need to format the text. In the previous podcast about crystal reports, we made formulas to add additional information to fields and such, but there's also another easier way to do this. We will start by adding a text field. In that text field, I will set the text to total number of cabinets in the room. I just need to expand the text field out, and now I can grab the summary field that we created and drag and drop it into the text field itself. Next, I can right justify this field, and then preview. Excellent. Now after all the cabinets are printed for each room, I get a total count of the cabinets for that room. What about for the job though? Let's go back to the designer and add another summary field. Well, that's what you might think to do. Remember when I said that we can just move the field around and the summary would change for us? Let's cancel this dialog and try that out. I will right-click on the text field we made and select Copy. Next, I will right-click on the Report Footer section and select Paste. Alternatively, I could also go to the Edit menu and select Paste as well. Now I will just place this field in the Report Footer section. It still says total number of cabinets in room. If I double-click on the text field, I can change room to job, because at the end of the report, it will calculate the total number of cabinets in the entire job, since there's no filtering being done. Let's preview this and see what we get. Awesome. Now since we placed the cabinet name, width, height, and depth fields, we had these text fields here at the top. When you place a database field in the details section, Crystal Reports wants to put these titles here, so we know what's what. I don't want them here anymore, so I'll just go ahead and delete them now. And now it's really starting to look like a really nice cabinet report. So I want to do one more thing, then call it a wrap for this episode. Right now we have each line item, but no way of being sure what each piece of information means. Since we are the report writers, we know. But what about the people that are generating the report in Cabinet Vision? We need to put some titles for the data, kind of like Crystal Reports had done for us and we just deleted. But I don't want them to be on the page header. Rather, I want them to show up after the group header. To accomplish this, we will move back to the designer and right-click on the group header number 1. Now we just click on the Insert Section Below command. This created a subsection that is a part of the Group 1 section. We did this because we may want special formatting or suppression on the section that may interfere with the group name field. For this report, we won't be getting into all of that though. Now that we have the new section, we can just place text fields that will represent the titles of the fields. Since this isn't anything new, I will just go ahead and place all of the titles we need and set them up properly. Okay, now if we preview this report, we can see the various titles and that they are being repeated in each group. Here in the Preview tab, let's just do some justification to get everything to look a little nicer. And we're done with this report. Now this was a pretty simple report, and I think that for the next Crystal Reports video I do, we'll be getting into making a report that is a little more complicated. Perhaps we'll look at recreating the part list report that ships with Cabinet Vision so that we can learn more about advanced formulas. Feel free to let me know if that's something you want to see, or if there's something else you would like to cover. You can either post that on my Facebook page or my Google Plus page, and I will see what I can do. Once again, I would like to thank Hayfla for their continued support, without which this podcast wouldn't be possible. Finally, as usual, I will leave you with this wonderful quote.